Welcome everybody to the Celtics Double Take Podcast. Bill McCaffrey and James Quan here again today. Boston Celtics, would you believe it, are above 500. We are a game ahead of the New York Knicks. All is right with the world. This week we took a loss to the Sixers before beating the Knicks, Timberwolves, and Nuggets. We're on a little 3-game win streak here. It feels good. It feels like the longest streak of the year, honestly. Before we get into all that, first things first, we have our best and worst takeaways from the week. James, you can go first.
Yeah, I feel my first has got to be, well, I'm going to start the worst, actually. And the worst it's got to be that Sixers game just with Embiid dropping 35 on us, just absolutely dominating, had no answers. I can't even say that it was totally because of Embiid that we lost. Like, I think there was other factors at play, but that's just not a good sign. If Embiid's dropping 35, if he's like the main big reason, if he's shooting 20 free throws, then we obviously cannot stop the guy. So we got to figure something out before the playoffs if we do end up facing them. But I got to say, I don't want to focus on negative because this win streak has been very, very encouraging. And you could say, oh, you barely won against the Knicks. You barely won against the T-Wolves. That Nuggets game was that statement game that we have not had this year. That big, like, I can't believe the run that we ended that game on. Those are the kind of like peaks that you see from like actual playoff teams. If we can do that to the Nuggets, I mean, the list goes on of teams that we can do that to. It's a very talented offensive team, kept them to 87 points. I don't know how many points it scored in the fourth quarter, probably like 8. And I think that's a very encouraging sign. Us winning close games against the Knicks and T-Wolves, winning close games against bad teams has been something that we've not been able to do. So overall, I'm pretty happy with how this week's gone.
Absolutely. My best thing for this week is just Tatum dropping 53, career high. Not many Celtics have had 50-point games. He's joining some elite company there. And my worst for this week is Evan Fournier, because as soon as we get this nice thing, it just gets ripped away from us immediately. He goes on the COVID list, and we really could have used him against the Sixers, which we can jump right into. The Sixers game, we have this new and improved roster that we're trying to make a run with, and you thought maybe, we can jump in here and we can really do something. Robert Williams versus Joel Embiid, everyone's been talking about it. And Embiid is he's unstoppable, unfortunately. He cannot be stopped. We have to double him every single possession. He gets a foul whenever he wants to, and he had his way with us. And it didn't help that, out of Kemba, Tatum, Jalen, and Smart, only one of those guys broke 20 points. Tatum had 20. Everyone else has less than 20 of our 4 best players. It's also really frustrating to me that Ben Simmons goes out there for 36 minutes, gets 12 points and 6 assists, and he's just like doesn't put up crazy numbers, but he gets to have Embiid on his team and gets to keep running through people.
Yeah, I mean, so I'm gonna get to Ben Simmons, but it's actually surprising that this was even a 10-point game, just because of what you just mentioned. Like, in the past, for us to have a close game in any capacity versus teams this good, we've had to have either Tatum go off, Brown go off, Kemba to not trip over his own feet, Marcus Smart maybe to have like a little 20 piece. None of that happened. And at the end of the day, I'm not going to go as far to call it a worst case scenario game, but I'm not entirely unconfident about a series with the Sixers. If this is going to be basically what you're going to get on our worst night in the playoffs, at least, especially when we're picking things up. I don't know. Do I think that Robert Williams is going to foul out every night? No. Do I think that like Kemba isn't going to have one of his signature playoff Kemba games? I think he is going to. So I don't think this is a big indictment on like our chances against the Sixers. Now, I will say, I completely agree with your Ben Simmons take, because this guy, I don't get it. In my mind, huge disappointment. He comes in as his number 1 overall pick. People are comparing him to LeBron, saying he can do it all. And then if you fast forward a few years later, he still can't shoot the ball, has no capacity to shoot the ball past 5 feet from the basket. You're paying, you spent a first overall pick on a Tony Allen that's more athletic. And everyone's like, oh, he's great on defense. That's all he can do is dominate the transition and play defense. I just don't get it. I just don't get like this whole entire like, oh no, he's LeBron. Oh wait, actually he's not LeBron, but he's still not a disappointment. You can't say that, because if you say that, then you just don't watch him play, man. No, he's a huge disappointment, and I will die on that. I know that has nothing to do with the outcome of the game, but I will die on this hill. He's a huge disappointment.
When that playoff series, when they didn't have him, we ran right through the Sixers. but I still can't even say that like he would have made the hugest difference. Like he doesn't have a jump shot, and he's getting 12 points a game. They're getting wins, and he does make some flashy plays, has some nice dunks, but I can't call him like a dominant player. He's an all-star, but doesn't really move the needle for me in any sense.
Yeah, I agree.
So 10-point loss to the Sixers. It felt like kind of more of that for a lot of it, and it felt like a game that we couldn't really get a win.
Yeah, no, we definitely couldn't pull away at any point. The Knicks, on the other hand, I feel like we had a little bit more fight. I feel like there were plenty of times in that game that things could have gone away from us, and we kind of pulled it together.
Absolutely. The Knicks game, I really thought that we might blow it. Like the Knicks, we needed to beat the Knicks. The Knicks are a team that we have to beat no matter what. And to make it as close as it was, I mean, Barry hits a three with 54 seconds left and ties the game. And then Marcus Smart, of all people, that guy has been missing threes the entire season in the fourth quarter, and he was able to put a three in with 36 seconds left and give us the stretch to win it there. Definitely was a little too close for comfort.
I was watching the game with my roommate, who happens to be a Knicks fan, and you're right. We just had to win that game, not only for the personal, just kind of the ego blow that it would have been if we had lost this game. It's just the fact that, listen, this is a surprise team. No one thought the Knicks were going to be good. Like, we're so much better than this team. Like, past all like the optics of this year, past the standings, past this whole entire thing, just black and white, better roster. Who you're going to pick? It's actually inexcusable for us to even be into close games with this team. Like they are overperforming. They're a great defensive team, but let's not like forget this is what happened in that Heat series where people were like, oh, like maybe the Heat, maybe they are more talented than the Celtics. BS. We were the most talented team out of at least those two teams in the Eastern Conference Finals, and against a team like the Knicks. Come on, what are we talking about? It's like when we win the game, there's like this like post-win clarity of like you're happy you won and you're like, oh my gosh, we almost lost to the Knicks, and this is a team that we're so much more talented than. Why was that even a game? I'm glad to come out with the win. I think overall, like, it was a tough win to get, but I'm gonna try to keep my perspective here and try to keep my goals higher than this.
Yeah, the Knicks, we should have won by more than 2 points. I honestly am just very happy that we won the game. I think that Randall and Barrett were the only guys to get more than 20. I guess Barrett, like, he is developing. Like, you would want a top 3 pick to develop. And Randall is the guy I really wish we could have grabbed in free agency because he's given them such great minutes this year, and he's like proven that he's all-star worthy and he's a great piece to have on a team. Tatum, he shows up with 25 points. He also has 8 turnovers. That was not helpful. Marcus Smart doing his thing, putting up numbers. Same with Jaylen Brown. Romeo starts this game. 25 minutes, he gets 6 points. Couldn't believe it, honestly, when we tipped the jump ball, and there's Romeo Langford. Yeah, that was something.
That's a classic Brad move. But yeah, I mean, on the other hand, when you actually watch the game, like, we played horribly. And yeah, those Tatum turnovers were like, 8 feels a little low. Like, there are a lot of times that they were trapping him this game. Instant double teams, trying to deny him the ball. I mean, he definitely had some bumps and bruises after this one. And there are plenty of times in which he got the ball, tried to drive in, gets engulfed by this Tom Thibodeau defense, and just tries to do the skip pass that gets intercepted every time. Like, they kind of busted out the cheat code for how to stop this guy. And on top of all of that, the team itself wasn't exactly firing on all cylinders. It, again, to me, just feels like our worst day versus their solid day. And that's why I feel the way I do about like a win like this. Happy to have it. But on the other hand, is it really like something that to take home and brag about? I think that the same could be said about the Timberwolves win, but I'm again glad that we win out these close games because that's something we haven't been able to do.
Yeah, that was again. We will say this enough times. If we blew the game to the Knicks, the season's over. There's no way around it. And even bigger with the Timberwolves. The next game is another. This is like the Knicks are like having a decent year, but they're just the Knicks. The Timberwolves are actually garbage, and we almost blew it. That was Oof. We call this a 3-game win streak. The win over the Nuggets really was very convincing. But the Knicks and Timberwolves game is a lot of anxiety came through those. So just going into that game, Tatum, 41 minutes, 53 points. He's the guy we need him to be. You love to see it. Kemba, Smart, and Brown, they're all putting up, 17, 24, 26. They're all contributing. Our best 4 players put up over 120 points. That's what you need from your best 4 players. Romeo, after getting a start and getting 25 minutes, he only gets 5 minutes this game. But yeah, it was too close for comfort at the end.
I mean, Romeo was just getting kind of exposed. And the thing is, we came out with the flattest defensive energy. The only reason why this game was really close is that the Timberwolves get off to this early lead. And they always seem to have an answer. For every time we kind of inch our way back, they hit a big 3, make a big play. We do some stupid foul for an N1 on their side. That's that kind of game. And I think we do, we've always known that we kind of play down to our opponent, but us coming out that flat against the Timberwolves, it kind of shows not only where we are as a team with no defensive identity, but where the whole NBA is with just the entire fatigue of where they are right now. We forget that we've been playing a massive amount of games in a very short amount of time. So that's why I'm going to give a little bit of a pass that you're facing the Timberwolves, that you might not come out raring to go. You might not be diving for loose balls. Maybe that's why Brad starts Romeo Langford in that game, just so he knows that this guy has energy. This guy hasn't been playing. I don't know what the exact motives are there, but I know that we built a pretty sizable lead. We blow it. In our defense, D'Angelo Russell always torches us. And this is no exemption. I mean, dude, that 4th quarter by D'Angelo Russell, that was something.
D'Lo, so yeah, the last 251 of this game, we're up by 11. It's 122 to 111. And D'Lo scores 11 points in those final 251. I think he hits 3 threes and also gets a layup somewhere in there.
Yep.
Tatum getting a dunk in that stretch is the only thing that gives us the hump to get into overtime. And luckily we were able to handle them in overtime. But I remember when we were talking about, do we want Kemba or do we want D'Lo? It was I always was kind of leaning toward D'Lo just because whenever the Nets played us, he would light us up. He was like Chris Middleton from mid-range against us, just an unstoppable force. And I came to finally say, you know what, Kemba just had the best year of his career. Kemba's probably the guy that can just be more efficient and fit into our team. I still think that D'Lo is so ball dominant.
It does not sound like that you're off the D'Lo bandwagon.
Well, D'Lo is very ball dominant. He also has not proven that he's a winner in this league, and neither is Kemba. But whatever. But yeah, D'Lo is someone that I always had my eye on, and he always gives us a lot of trouble. And now you think, D'Lo or Kemba, it's not much of a difficult choice, is it?
Well, he has his ability to kind of be a nobody for 3.5 quarters of basketball and come alive at any point. I mean, he's that much of he's a guy who just scores in bunches, no way around it. Obviously his defense, is the reason why teams are reluctant to call him even close to a franchise guy. They don't want to give him the big money. That's why he ends with the team with the Timberwolves. But I mean, he's exactly the guy that beats us, if that makes any sense. And this team is full of them. The weird thing is that the Timberwolves weren't supposed to be this just dog crap team. They weren't. You look at, we came into this year, we thought that Anthony Edwards could be something, which he is. He's not a bust. We thought that Cat, D'Lo, that some of these guys would put together some sort of a season. This was a play-in tournament kind of team in the beginning of the year. Obviously, that has just completely gone to absolute shit. But again, their best night versus our worst night. I think that when we start building a weird sense of confidence, yeah, that game almost got away from us, but we edged it out. I think that leads up to a game like the Nuggets where you can lock in. That when you lock in, that you can be locked down on defense. I think that in a weird way, I think the last 2 games kind of led into the Nuggets one, just in a confidence standpoint.
I think so too. A 2-game win streak coming into the Nuggets was big, and the Nuggets, with Jokic, we always just struggle against teams with great centers. And Jokic isn't Embiid, but he's much more of a distributor, and they have a lot of talented guys on that team. They just got Aaron Gordon. They've got a talented group of starters. I think they're prepared to make a title run or a deep playoff run with the team they've built for them. But I don't know what happened at the end of that game. I think it was like a 31-5 run or something like that. Like unprecedented from us to be that stifling on defense and that explosive on offense.
Yeah. Let me ask you something, Dylan. Were you a kid who studied in high school?
When I had to.
So that's same here. And there's always that big test that like you actually study for hours for, and then you would get a kick-ass grade and beat some of the smart kids in the class. Like this kind of felt like, because here's the thing. We are a athletic team. We are a young team. We're a long team. Like this felt to me like the big test for the Celtics that they finally studied for. Like they surprised themselves that when we actually exert ourselves to the full capacity, we can actually be not just a good defensive team, not like a team like the Knicks that plays good team defense, has a good scheme, and that's why they're able to overperform. No, individually, player by player, be a dominant defensive team. And when it comes to wings, what happened with Jokic, I think, is an aberration. I think us keeping Jokic to 17 points, 6 of 15 shooting is not something that would happen twice in a 7-game series. But our ability to keep Porter Jr. to a manageable number, us to lock down every member of their bench. Guys like Aaron Gordon, Will Barton aren't making game-changing plays. This is something that we're completely capable of when we turn it up. And again, if you're thinking of things in a playoff standpoint, that's what it's going to be every night. Is there are teams 110% versus your 110%. Our 110% looked fucking awesome this game.
Absolutely. 110% was about 100% more than we've been showing all year. And, Michael Porter Jr. got 22 points. I still enjoy watching him play. Mike Malone used to never give him or IT any minutes, and I was always so angry at him for that. But now he's showing, you got to play this man. Everyone else had less than 20. On the Nuggets, we kept all of their stars to less than 20. Aaron Gordon, 31 minutes, 7 points.
Yeah, complete pedestrian game.
We'll take Fournier giving us 15 and 25, 7, 31. Jeez, you're supposed to be a starter, bro.
No, jokes aside, Fournier is the guy that we got, 20 cents on the dollar. And we haven't even seen, think about that defensive effort last night, plus another dynamic bench scorer. Like, this could have gone ugly. And if it wasn't already ugly enough, this could have gone ugly. And that's a thing. Like when we're in this weird season, when you're kind of taking things week by week with how the team is, you look at the absence of a guy like Fournier. You look at the fact that this team, there's 4 guys on this team that have been playing with us for 2 weeks. We have to take this thing week by week. And if we can continue this momentum going forward to teams like the Trailblazers and stop that kind of dynamic offensive team, I'm not worried about us scoring. I know that in the playoffs that Tatum is good for 2 30-point games per 7-game series. We know that Jaylen Brown's in there. It's really about the defensive effort. It's really about how can we band together and mesh in a defensive standpoint. And if we can beat the Nuggets and the Trailblazers and keep them both underneath 100 points, that's as good as you're going to get. That's as much of acing a test as you're going to see.
The Blazers are going to be exciting. Just like the Nuggets, they have a really stacked, just starting lineup.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's kind of the position we're in. And in a couple of these games, we did not go deep into the bench at all. It was here's our best 5 players.
I like it.
Here's Kemba Smart, Tatum Brown, Rob. And then everyone else gets 10, 15 minutes. That's what it's needed to be all year. We had to figure out what the right combination of people was. We also had a lot of injuries, but for a while, we had to just keep trying. Okay, is it Naismith? Is it Grant? Is it who's going to be and now we've kind of narrowed it down to Pritchard gets his minutes. Tristan Thompson needs to get some minutes to give Rob a break. And then you can slide in either Grant or Semi, depending on matchups. Romeo is getting more minutes now. It makes more sense. This team, this is something that Bill Simmons said on his podcast the other week talking about the Suns. He was like, the Suns have an identity. With Chris Paul there, they have such an identity of this upstart team. The Celtics, he said, have no identity, which I think is a problem. But if we can be this powerhouse, this team, if we can make ourselves feel like an all-star team and play great team defense, then it's going to translate to a lot of success. So hopefully that happens.
Yeah,
Hopefully.
no, I totally agree, and I listened to that Bill Simmons point, and I really do think that it is right on. Like, it's not talent, it's not like any given night potential that has stopped us. It has been just a complete lack of identity. We don't know who, we don't know when, we don't know where. That's the problem. Um, Now, I think how do you build an identity? Well, you string some games together, and the good news is that though the season does feel like it's already wrapping up, like we do have about a little less than 20 games to figure that identity out, and we have some pretty good teams to face to measure ourselves up. Um, the the Portland game is interesting just because of their newly acquired Norman Powell and how we kind of uh again how we respond to a dominant game, because we see from like this year it's like we do have good games, we have beaten teams like the Bucks, but we haven't been able to follow it up, and I think that goes a long way in kind of establishing who you are.
Definitely, absolutely. We need to follow this up with the games this week. The Blazers is going to be a great challenge on Tuesday. We're in Portland. I'm pretty certain it's a 10 o'clock
Yep.
game. So going to see those 2,000 fans try and give us hell. It's gonna be fun to watch. I just also like, this is a Celtics podcast, but I love the Blazers, so I'm excited either way.
No, watching
Um,
Dame, especially against a guy like Kemba, so Dame's gonna light it up. It's
yeah.
gonna be fun.
The Lakers, like, would have been a really cool game. I really hope we win. It would suck to lose to the Lakers without AD and LeBron. That's what a lot of these games feel like. It's just like, instead of like this game's gonna be awesome, be like, man, it would suck to lose to this team.
I'll tell you
Um,
what, Dennis Schroeder, man, Celtics killer.
it's true. That's true. Then we got the Warriors. The Warriors, obviously, they're having the year they're having. This is like a pretty middle of the road team, so it could go either way. The Bulls, I thought after the trade deadline, the Bulls were going to make a run. They beat the Nets on April 4th, but they just lost to the Timberwolves yesterday. So they're still a couple games below 500. I'm not sure if this run they're supposed to go on is actually going to happen. Hopefully, we can keep them down because they're trying to climb up to the 8 seed. Wouldn't want to see Daniel Tyson in a playing game. That's all I know.
Revenge Tice game. Revenge Tice game. No,
It's actually crazy to me. I didn't think about this until just now, but like, if we suck and we go down to the 10 seed, or the 10 seed, we can still make the playoffs. That's unacceptable. These playing games are not the thing. Maybe the 8-9, but we could be a playoff team as a 10 seed. So could whoever gets. That's crazy.
I disagree, man. I think it adds so much value to the end of the season. A time where like it used to be like the dog days where you'd have just like complete starting lineup sitting and stuff like that. Now you can't lose. And here's the thing: we're feeling ourselves because it's a good week. The Sox are winning, the Celtics are winning. We're feeling good, but I'll tell you what, things go south faster than we know it. And in South in this year's playoffs, the South means that you got to win 2 games to get into the playoffs. And think about us. Think about us trying to win 2 games, like us 2 games on the line. Like I just feel like I don't want to be there. I don't want to be like trying to edge out 2 games against the Knicks to get into the playoffs. I'd rather have us shoot up to that 6 seed where we can just avoid this whole entire thing altogether. But yeah, I mean, a team like the Bulls, a team like the Knicks, these lower end Eastern Conference teams will certainly be a headache just because of this new format.
I agree definitely. The Knicks, I think, are going to stick around for a while, so I hope that we can climb up to like the 6 seed. And that needs to happen just to avoid the stress of that.
Yeah. Now, before we tail off, though, I just want to ask you a question,
Yes.
because when you actually look at like the standings, when you actually look at how this season just might like pan out, and how we're playing right now, like we talk about like us hopefully trying to get the 6 seed, which by the way belongs to Charlotte Hornets, who are severely undermanned, who I am very confident that we'll catch up to. Outside of the Nets, I don't think anybody wants to play us. And we very much are the Mavericks of the East, where we might be the 7 seed, but you don't want to be the 2 seed. Like, or like if you we might be the 7 seed, but even if we get to 6 and 3, like you just don't want to face us in the first round. In a lot of ways, I feel like that's just how like the Heat were last year. Who do you think like if you're the G or you're the coach of any of these Eastern Conference teams, like who outside the Nets like really wants to face the Celtics in the first round?
I don't think anyone would prefer that. Like maybe like the Sixers, they want to finally be the ones to beat us. But I think that every single team in the playoffs would rather play the Bulls, the Knicks, the whoever's down there than the Celtics because they know that I think that everyone knows the Celtics team, like on a given night, will give you their best. Like on a given night, the Celtics team with Tatum and Brown, if they just have a good night, like we're gonna go off. Like it's unfortunate that it just comes down to two ISO players, but we have those ISO players. So you don't want to face a team with two All Stars and defensive player of the year candidates alongside them. If you can call Smart defensive player of the year candidate this year, I don't know. He's usually up there.
He's in our hearts. But yeah, I mean, you just look, your team like the Sixers, like you either can, you have your choice of the Bucks, obviously the Nets, and even teams like Miami. It's just like, who are you going to put over us? That's why I think it's so interesting. That's why I love the playing game format. And I'm really looking for teams like the Hawks and the Hornets to start dropping off and for us to sneak in there. So hopefully that's how this next week goes.
Hopefully. These are 4 winnable games here. And maybe it turns out like last week where like the Sixers game is tough, the Blazers game is going to be tough, but then we've got 3 winnable games so hopefully we can continue the winning. We need to stop, like every time we do a show, it feels like we go 2-2 or we go 1-3. We need to go 3-1 more often if we're going to pick up some wins. You need to go at least 3-1 this week. That's my call.
Yeah, I mean, guess how many games back we are at the 4 seed?
How many?
1.
There you go. Just get a couple wins. That's all we need.
That's all we need, baby. It's all we need.
Hell yeah. That is going to do it for this week on Double Take Celtics. You can subscribe on iTunes at Celtics Double Take or go find Double Take on YouTube. For extra credit, follow at the Double Take Show on Instagram. James, you got any last words?
Go Sox. We've been hearing dirty water a lot. Oh, baby, we're back. We're top of the AL East. That's how this team is supposed to roll. Hell yeah.
There's got to be at least one winning team in Boston. So if we have 2, God bless. All right.
Yeah.
Peace out. We will see you next week.
Take care.